Hello and welcome to what promises to be quite a long episode of Lore of the Cards, the series that seeks to find the lore hidden within your Hearthstone deck. Why long, you ask? Well, today we will be covering the priest legendary Vol'jin, the current acting Warchief of the Horde, one of the two main factions in the Warcraft universe. So, sit back, relax, and find out one of the reasons I think that trolls are the best race in World of Warcraft. Not only do I love the way that trolls look, but it's the lore behind characters like Vol'jin and Zul'jin that cement my adoration. Anyway, let's stop with all this opinion and get down to the lore facts. Covering a character as prominent as Vol'jin in the Warcraft universe is going to take time, so to make his tale a little more digestible and get episodes out there a little quicker, I've split this lore of the cards into several parts. How many that is at the moment, I sadly don't know, as I haven't yet finished writing the full thing. It got to the point where I thought, I really need to start getting some of this done to release. But at the end of the road, I will compile them all into one monster episode. Today, we'll be looking at the Gurubashi Empire and Vol'jin's journey to become a Shadow Hunter. I really hope you enjoy this and that I do Vol'jin justice. The art of the card is by Raymond Swanland, an American artist hailing from the state of California. As Swanland began his professional career as an artist, he was extremely fortunate, his words not mine, to end up as a member of the art team of Oddworld Inhabitants, working his way into all the art projects he could for the company. For those of you that haven't heard of Oddworld, they produced the beloved Abe's Odyssey and Abe's Exodus for the PlayStation 1, the former having just recently received the remake treatment for the game New and Tasty. This was Swanland's schooling, trial by fire in the commercial world. It seems Swanland survived the fire and is today producing art for comics and popular trading card games as well, such as Magic the Gathering and the Warcraft TCG, until it was cancelled. He has produced art for several key Warcraft lore characters as well. The Lich King before binding with Arthas, Alexstrasza in her elven form, and of course, Vol'jin. Troll society is divided into several different tribes, differing in appearance and culture. These tribes were once split into two grand empires, the Gurubashi and the Armani, that ruled the lands of Azeroth when the world was one continent, the Gurubashi calling the southeastern jungles their home, and the Armani the central forest lands. Around 16,000 years ago, not many could challenge the rule of these empires, not even each other, because while the Armani and the Gurubashi disliked each other, these tensions never erupted into all-out war. There was one race who challenged the trolls, the Akir. Highly aggressive insectoid creatures that sought to spread like locusts across Azeroth until the only life left were insectoids like themselves. The trolls and Akir warred for thousands of years, neither side winning a decisive victory, until one day the trolls' persistence paid off. The Akir kingdom was split, and they exiled themselves to the far reaches of the earth. The trolls then returned to their kingdoms, content with the territory they each possessed. Later, the Gurubashi Empire would collapse in on itself. This occurred thousands of years from today. After the Great Sundering that saw the single continent of Kalimdor split into four, Kalimdor, the Eastern Kingdoms, Pandaria and Northrend, the Gurubashi Empire ended up on the Eastern Kingdoms, encompassing an area called the Stranglethorn Vale. After the Sundering, the Empire struggled to find stability. They rebuilt their fallen cities, began to establish firm control over their territory, and recoup some of the great power they had had when their empire was prosperous. The Gurubashi were able to do this with the aid of one of their lower, Hakar. All trolls worship a pantheon of primal gods, called Loa. These beings are the spirits of creatures that have existed on Azeroth even before the Titans came to reshape the chaotic world into one of order. The Loas will tend to be spirits of animals and grant powerful boons to their followers. For example, the Troll's gift of fast regeneration from wounds is accredited to their Loas. Some are powerful and others weak, and each Troll tribe will tend to worship their own Loas. It is also believed by the Zandalari tribe that powerful members of their tribe, when they pass, can become Loas. This is possibly proved with the Darkspear tribe's Loa Bwan Samdi, a Loa who appears as a troll that has dominance over the souls of the dead. Hakkar was an extremely powerful Loa, and shared with the Gurubashi the secret of blood, to help them not only recover after the Sundering, but to begin to extend their territory. With blood magic, the user is able to manipulate and corrupt the energies of life itself. With Hakkar's help, the Gurubashi were in control of most of Stranglethorn Vale and several islands in the South Seas. In return for the gift that Hakkar had bestowed upon his followers, the Blood God desired to be fed the souls of his acolytes. Far away on the island of Zandalar, considered by trolls to be the birthplace of their race, the Zandalar tribe were at first happy for their brethren being able to find some sort of stability. The Zandalari were the first of all troll tribes, and all following tribes are linked to this one in some way. A tribe that values scholarly pursuits and knowledge, the Zandalari later became somewhat disturbed by the rate of growth of their Gurubashi brethren's empire, and began to research this extremely powerful Loa that seemed to have been quiet for so long. What they found shocked and appalled them. By consulting troll myths and ancient historical accounts, the Zandalari discovered that Hakkar also went by another name, the Soul Flayer, and richly earned this title. Not only did Hakkar demand sacrifices to feed upon their blood, but he was also capable of filling his followers with dark intent, making them quick to anger and murderous, actions that Hakkar revelled in. Recognising Hakkar to be a threat to the entire world, the Zandalari set sail for the Eastern Kingdoms to warn their troll brothers. As the Zandalar tribes sailed to warn their brothers, the Gurubashi too began to suspect that their empire-saving patron perhaps had a more sinister objective. As Hakkar fed upon more and more blood, he became more powerful, and his demands began to escalate, becoming impatient with his loyal priests, the Hakkari. Hakkar demanded that the priests summon him to their physical realm, so that he could directly consume the blood of his victims. Many Hakkari suspected that if Hakkar was allowed to feed unchecked, his hunger would be insatiable until he had consumed the blood of all living things on Azeroth. When the Zandalari arrived, the Gurubashi Empire was on the brink. The numerous sacrifices that Hakkar had demanded had caused a state of civil unrest. As a result, many of the Gurubashi would come to heed the warnings of the Zandalari. However, a small group of Hakkari, called the Atal-I, sought to enact their master's will, bring him physically to their world. The Atal-I were almost successful in their mission, but the Zandalari, the Hakkari and the tribes of the Gurubashi Empire banded together to stop this. Despite the might of two empires being thrown at the Atal-I, they held their own, being aided by Hakkar's minions and his avatar, his physical presence upon Azeroth, the conduit through which he was fed his sacrifices. In fact, it seemed the Atal-I would be victorious, but just as the battle seemed its darkest for the world of Azeroth, the Gurubashi and the Zandalari were able to deliver a death blow to Hakkar's avatar, severing his connection with the physical world. Without their god to aid them, the Atal-I were defeated and banished from the Gurubashi capital of Zul'jin, many being hunted down and killed. But some would survive to continue their worship. Despite this victory, the Gurubashi Empire remained in a state of civil unrest. For their hand in aiding their empire, the Hakkari hoped that their sacrifices to Hakkar would go unpunished. Trolls in this era of history were very unforgiving. The priests were brutally tortured by the tribes of the empire. Those that were lucky were stripped of all their possessions and exiled from the kingdom. The Hakkari fled from the empire and would later once again join forces with the Atal-I. The fracturing of the Gurubashi Empire did not stop there. The tribes that made up the Empire split off from one another, claiming territories in Stranglethorn for their own. The red-haired Bloodscalp tribe claimed northwestern Stranglethorn as theirs. The Skull Splitters settled in central Stranglethorn, their blue hair separating them visually from the Bloodscalp, and the Gurubashi tribe remained the most powerful, keeping control of the Empire's capital, Zul'jin. The Sandfury had been split off from the Empire long ago by the Great Sundering. They resided in the desert of Tiras in Kalimdor and evolved into sand trolls, their skin drying and cracking to help cope with the desert climate. The smallest of the Gurubashi tribes, the Darkspear, would soon find they were no longer welcome in their kingdom. Fighting broke out between the tribes and animosity towards each other skyrocketed. The great Gurubashi Empire was no more. The battles between the tribes raged on at length, until the Darkspear found they could no longer remain in the lands they had called home for so long. They fled from Stranglethorn, unsurprisingly harbouring a deep resentment for the other tribes they had once called comrades. A hatred returned in kind. The Darkspear travelled the sea to the west and settled upon an island that would come to be known as Darkspear Isle, thought to be located near the raging maelstrom at the centre of Azeroth. Upon this island, the Darkspear settled and enjoyed a relatively peaceful existence, led by the wizened witch doctor Sen'jin, father of Vol'jin. Witch doctors are spellcasters that interestingly blend faith with science. Sen'jin in particular had a profound connection to the spirits of his tribe and his tribe's lower. Witch doctors will frequently dabble in alchemy and create totems to inspire their allies in battle. These totems can warn of enemy attack, stun foes, and even heal entire armies. A witch doctor is kind of like a hybrid class, a mix between a priest and a shaman. This peaceful existence must have been quite the change for the Darkspear, who had endured generations of war when a part of the Gurubashi Empire. In this relative peace, Sen'jin began to train his young son Vol'jin, hoping one day that his son would become a shadow hunter. The hunters are well respected amongst all jungle troll tribes, including the Darkspear. These warriors are masters of voodoo magic, where the hunter channels the dark energy of the tribe's lowers. Unlike the insidious fel magic, which destroys life force through sacrifice, voodoo has dark yet natural ties to the lower spirits, and to wield it is seen as more of a blessing, a gift from the lower. Not only are the shadow hunters able to curse those that would threaten their people through voodoo, but their spiritual magics can also be used to heal the wounds of their allies. In the beginnings of troll society, before the great Zandalari, Armani and Gurubashi empires were formed, the shadow hunters led their people. As the trolls began to construct great cities, the shadow hunters no longer led, but were still greatly respected and often held positions of authority. Sen'jin yearned to return to an era where the trolls would be led by the shadow hunters once again, those that tiptoed dark and light for the good of their people. To quote Vol'jin himself, to be a shadow hunter is to master chaos. Vol'jin soon found himself out of his depth when his training was hastened. He was sent into the first home after his father had received a chilling vision that the Darkspear would soon have to leave their rain-swept island home. Change was coming, and Sen'jin wanted his son to be prepared. The first home was a jungle upon the Darkspear Isle, with foliage so thick that no light nor wind could pierce its canopy. It was here that trolls of the Darkspear became shadow hunters, and Vol'jin was one of the youngest to ever venture into this realm of darkness. Within the jungle, the Darkspear lower would test possible shadow hunters, granting great gifts, but also inflicting great torment upon those that entered first home. The lower would either grant trolls that entered a vision of their destiny and deem them worthy of their path in life, or drive them to rip out their own eyes. It was said that only shadow hunters or fools ventured into the first home. Sometimes the shadow hunters would return. The fools never did. Vol'jin, knowing he was ill-equipped and too young to face the trials that awaited him, sought out his childhood friend, Zul'jin. Vol'jin was able to persuade his best friend to sneak into the jungle with him, convinced that with Zul'jin at his side, he could face any of the trials the lower may set before him. Zul'jin, unaware that Vol'jin had been sent to the jungle to experience trials by his father, happily agreed to aid his friend. When the two friends first ventured into the thick jungle, they thought that perhaps the dreaded legends they had heard of First Home had been exaggerated. They soon found their thoughts to be folly. After a narrow brush with the wildlife, a giant raptor the likes of which neither friend had seen, the trolls traipsed round the undergrowth. They came to a ledge with jagged rocks below, where they set up camp. It was here they first encountered a lower. At first, Vol'jin just felt a chill, but this was soon replaced with excruciating pain, far more painful than any battle injury Vol'jin had previously experienced. The pure agony consumed his body and mind, so he could no longer think. The pain still coursing through his body, the lower spoke. Vol'jin could end the pain simply by throwing himself onto the jagged rocks below. Vol'jin knew this to be true, but endured, and after what seemed like an eternity, he was released from the torture and experienced a vision of his future. He was leading his tribe through a dry wasteland, and on the horizon, a great city loomed. The city was filled with odd green-skinned creatures and bulls that stood upon their hind legs. Vol'jin approached the leader of these green creatures, and the two shook hands as equals. The lower questioned Vol'jin's vision. Why were the once proud, strong and independent Darkspear now subservient to other races? The Darkspear should not rely on others, they should fight alone and die proud. Vol'jin agreed that the Darkspear were a proud lineage that valued their freedom, but he also saw the value of working with others. Without these allies in the vision, the Darkspear could lose their freedom, and their once proud ancient tribe would be no more. Vol'jin, above all, was proud of this, the endurance of the Darkspear. The lower saw and agreed with the wisdom of Vol'jin's words, surprised that such wisdom came from one so young. Vol'jin had passed his trial, and the lower gifted him with sight, the ability to see the lower. At this point, Vol'jin came clean with Zul'jin, that his father had sent him to experience these visions, and that he had gone against Sen'jin's wishes by bringing Zul'jin to help him endure. Zul'jin understood. The two friends had always been able to rely on each other to conquer the greatest of life's challenges. Vol'jin knew Sen'jin would have been displeased with what he'd done, as the leader of the Darkspear could show no weakness or softness. They needed to cope with the difficulties of life. In a way, Vol'jin was, just approaching this strength differently, having the confidence to rely on one's allies rather than be crushed by the burden himself. It wasn't long till Vol'jin saw a second lower and ran off without Zul'jin to chase it down. The lower showed Vol'jin two visions. One with him in an opulent palace, surrounded by riches, women and sitting on a brilliant throne. Between Vol'jin's ankle and the throne was a thin gold chain that held him in place, but he seemed happy in this vision. The other showed Vol'jin beaten and bloodied, fighting his enemies alone or with his Darkspear brothers at his side. He had his back against the ropes, but was not tied down. Vol'jin scoffed at this test, knowing that the lower was asking which he preferred. He may not be in a palace, but Vol'jin would always choose to be free. The lower told Vol'jin that the choice was not the test, but if he had hesitated in that choice for even a heartbeat, he would have failed. He was shown another vision, where the Orc leader had changed, and Vol'jin lost a dear friend that was a Tauren, slain in a duel with this new leader. The Darkspear left the giant city that welcomed them in the first vision. The lower, confused, asked why this was, as Vol'jin had said relying on others helped keep the Darkspear strong and survive. Vol'jin again conceded to these points, but argued that under this new leader, the Darkspear would lose their soul, becoming a race of warmongers. Again, the lower was impressed by Vol'jin's wisdom. Zul'jin also experienced a vision, where he led half the Darkspear from their leader, as he was too weak. Vol'jin and Zul'jin were to encounter one more lower before their time in First Home would come to an end. While out hunting, Vol'jin sensed he was being stalked. Rather than become the prey, he launched himself at his adversary, tackling them to the ground. Vol'jin came face to face with his father. The two did battle. Vol'jin stunned his father would attack him, and the battle ended with Sen'jin bringing his staff down upon Vol'jin's hand, shattering his bones and mangling his thumb beyond repair. Still stunned, Vol'jin asked his father, why? And the old troll replied, "You don't fight me because you think you know me? Weak." Seeing his thumb was beyond repair, Vol'jin had only one choice. As I've mentioned before, the lower grant trolls the gift of regeneration. This includes broken bones, and with small body parts, the trolls are able to grow them back. Arms, legs and vital organs are too complicated for regeneration, but the thumb is not. Vol'jin used his glaive to sever his mangled thumb, so that a new one that could function properly would grow in its place. In the throes of agony, another lower came to Vol'jin. This one had more recently become a lower, and sounded familiar. This lower showed a vision of Vol'jin fighting Zul'jin to the death. In his other visions, Vol'jin had done everything he could to preserve his people, and now he was killing one of his own. The lower questioned this. Vol'jin replied, "I kill anyone who is a threat to the future of the Darkspears. It don't matter who. The tribe is everything. Its future, everything." For Vol'jin's commitment to the future of his clan, the lower granted him the ability to commune with them. The lower would not bend to his will, but always be there to possibly aid him. Vol'jin had become a shadow hunter. Zul'jin had experienced a similar vision to Vol'jin, but in his, he was the righteous troll. Both friends agreed that their visions were possible paths, but not set in stone, and together they left First Home. One a witch doctor, the other a shadow hunter. The further the two friends travelled away from First Home, the more, to their frustration, they forgot, even when desperately trying to cling to the visions they had experienced. They returned to their home to find it in ruins. What seemed like a week in First Home had actually been 3 months, and much had happened in Vol'jin's absence, events that Sen'jin had foreseen. Just before Vol'jin ventured into First Home, the trolls found their relatively peaceful existence disturbed. Humans from the kingdom of Tiras had settled upon the Darkspear Isle and pushed the trolls into the mainland. The once docile murlocs on the island also became aggressive, goaded into this frame of mind by the Sea Witch. She lived in the seas around Darkspear Island, and the murlocs offered sacrifices to her, often trolls. Zarjira the Sea Witch was worshipped as a deity by the murlocs, and appeared as a banshee in Warcraft 3 and an ethereal naga in World of Warcraft. At this time, Sen'jin received his vision and sent Vol'jin away, as he knew this needed to be done to complete what he had seen. With Vol'jin gone, the events of Sen'jin's vision began to play out. When hope seemed to be lost for the Darkspear, a group of Orcs were washed up upon the shore of the Darkspear Isle. These green-skinned brutes, led by the wise and noble Thrall, had found their ships caught in Azeroth's savage maelstrom as they fled from the lands of the Eastern Kingdoms for Kalimdor. A prophet had warned them that a threat to the whole of Azeroth would soon manifest upon the Eastern Kingdoms, and the Orcs needed to flee to be ready for this invasion. Sen'jin greeted Thrall with open arms and welcomed his aid. His vision had emphasised the importance of this young seer. He warned Thrall of the humans. Why they had settled was not clear. Tiras may have wanted to expand their territory, or they may have been hunting the Orcs, who had stolen human ships to escape the Eastern Kingdoms. Either way, Thrall was happy to help Sen'jin drive the humans away. But just as the battle was won, a swarm of Murlocs descended upon the armies, capturing the Orcs, Darkspear and the Tiras survivors. This included Thrall and Sen'jin. The Murlocs intended to sacrifice them to appease the Sea Witch. Thrall was able to escape the captivity of the Murlocs and set about rescuing as many Orcs and Trolls as he possibly could. Thrall and his freed allies travelled deeper and deeper into the Murlocs' dungeons, trying to find the Darkspear's enigmatic leader. But the Murlocs' High Sorcerer had dragged Sen'jin to the very depths of the dungeon. The Orcs and Trolls battled the Murlocs in a desperate bid to save the chieftain, but it was all for naught. With the Murlocs dead, Sen'jin too would soon die, wounded so grievously that not even his superior troll regeneration could save him. This had all been in accordance with Sen'jin's vision, but there was one last step that needed to be taken in order to complete it. Sen'jin implored Thrall that he lead the Darkspear off of the island. Thrall granted the old troll's dying wish. As the Darkspear scrabbled to ready themselves for this exodus, Vol'jin and Zul'jin returned. Master Gadrin, Zul'jin's teacher, informed Vol'jin that his father had died, but Vol'jin already knew, due to his newfound connection with the Lower. I have a sneaking suspicion that the final Lower Vol'jin faced in his vision quest may have been Sen'jin. Now chieftain of his tribe, Vol'jin led the operation to lead his people from the shores of their home, eagerly assisted by Zul'jin. The Sea Witch did her best to thwart the Orcs and Trolls' attempt to leave the island, but was ultimately unsuccessful. So, there you have it, part 1 of Vol'jin's rather epic tale. If you've enjoyed this instalment, it would be great if you give the episode a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Better yet, sharing this around would be awesome and help others learn about this fantastic lore character. If you really want to hurt my Whittle feelings, you can hit the dislike button and make a comment about how ginger people have no souls. I'm ginger, by the way. If you like the art, I do my best to credit every artist in the description below, so why not give them some love? By following us on Twitter, @the6gamers, means that you'll get updates on part 2 as I'm working on it. Oh, and that vote from last episode? Yeah, that's still open, so if you haven't voted yet, let me know in the comments or use the poll in the description below. Whew, that was a mouthful. Till next time guys, happy Hearthstoning, and I'll see you later for more Lore of the Cards.